Win big in 2025 with RotoBaller.com's MLB Premium Pass. It includes our preseason draft kit, 15 exclusive lineup tools, and the Team Sync platform. Get customized rankings for your specific league format. Sync your leagues with Team Sync and use our new live draft assistant and get customized advice for your scoring settings. Get a discount for any MLB Premium Pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit RotoBaller.com, sign up today, and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They got paid contests coming to a state near you. They're giving out boosts and bonuses, slashing lines all day long. Check it out. It's a real fun platform. And what is up, everybody? This is episode 177 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast, Tap That. And we've got UFC 315 this weekend.
So is that camera big enough to take in the largest arm in Westland, Oregon that has found its way to Houston, Texas? Because that thing looks a little bit small.
Folks, for my picks on all things combat sports and more, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Come out to the RotoBaller MMA Discord on Saturday. Let's talk about UFC 315. Look up for my MMA DFS Values Picks article. Comes out Friday afternoons. And we're entering week 7 of the spring football season. So check out my UFL gambling content. That comes out on Friday mornings. And in a very special episode of Tap That with me tonight, if you caught my second appearance on Wager Wars, this guy came out victorious. We both had a good day, but hands off to 138 MMA. 138, thank you so much for being here, man. How's it going?
It's going great, brother. Feel like I'm coming down with a bit of a cold, but other than that, I'm good. So if I sound nasally, that's why.
It is the season for it, man. It comes
Yes.
comes so quickly. Just like Mother's Day, creeps up so much quicker than you expect, catches everybody off guard. So something that I know that has been a big topic after this past weekend.
Okay.
Bo Nickel takes the loss to Rainier. And
here we go.
I've loved the Ritter for a while. But here's the thing. This has been a hotly debated topic. I know you have your own views on this. What do you call a fraud check? And do you think it happened to Bo Nickel?
Okay. I love that this is a topic we're getting to talk about because this gets me so heated because as someone who's done martial arts for more than, the bulk of my life, right? I'm 33 now and I started practicing martial arts when I was like 10. So it's been a while, right? And it blows my mind how people can you're either great or you're terrible, and they don't have the ability to see in between. And then there's something that started more recently. When fighters lose, instead of a fighter being, oh, they were really good and they beat this guy, it's, oh, that guy just sucked. So like no fighters really get built up in the way that they used to, because every time somebody wins, instead of beating a good opponent, it's, oh, that opponent just sucked. I'll never bet them again. They're a fraud. They're a joke. Like, oh, he's a bum. It's like they did this with Abus the other day when he beat Michel Pereira. Instead of Abus putting on a good performance, instead of him shutting down the offense of Pereira, it was, oh, Michel sucks. He didn't show up. Whatever. So it drives me crazy because, and sure, everybody's going to have an off night, this, that, and the other. I get that. But sometimes it's just that one guy is better, and it doesn't mean the other guy's a fraud or a loser or a fake or a phony or anything like that. There are frauds in MMA. There absolutely are. We've seen many of them. In fact, Askar Mozarov is a great example of a fraud in MMA. That dude was a fraud. He straight up made up his record. The dude fought a bunch of guys that were ineligible for rankings, like all this stuff. Bo Nickel's not a fraud. He's a guy that's been training MMA. He had never been in a fight before in his entire life. I'm not even talking about it as like a competition fight. He had never been in a fight in his life. And then he started training about 3 to 4 years ago, somewhere in there. And that was the first time he'd ever done martial arts outside of wrestling. Wrestling is a martial art, but it's just one small piece, right? It doesn't make him a fraud. He fought a guy that's been fighting professionally since 2013 and has only lost twice in his career to the same guy who happens to be a multiple division champion over in ONE FC, Anatoly Malikin, and he's an absolute juice box of a man. So Rainier de Ridder is not getting the credit he deserves. Bo Nickel's getting shot down more than he deserves. And I know I'm hogging a lot of the microphone time. I'm heated on this. I want to hear your opinion on it. That's what I've got.
And a quick point on DeRitter too, like he is such a like guy from a promotion outside the UFC. You know, like I not necessarily stylistically, but I get like Musasi vibes from him a little bit, and like the place in MMA that he occupies. He
Yep.
stylistically is kind of similar to like when Jason Mayhem Miller was like with Strike Force and with Dream and some of those organizations. Now here's my thing about the term fraud check. I share a lot of your sentiments on this. I think that fraud check is not even an appropriate term 99% of the time that it's used. I think the better term would be hype check. I think that makes a lot more sense.
Mhm.
Fraud, I don't even know what people mean by that. And a few specific instances where I really remember being introspective about this is Chase Hooper loses to Alex Caceres years ago.
Yeah.
Chase Hooper looked like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone 2 when that happened. For real. I'm not, and obviously that's not dicking on him like he did. He has developed his physique tremendously since that time. His striking now looks quite serviceable. He looks muscular. And he lost to Bruce Leroy. And people were saying, oh, Chase Hooper got fraud checked. And it's like, do you not know who Alex Caceres is? And do you not appreciate the fact that nobody, you know how rare it is for a 20-year-old to be in the UFC in the first place? It happened with Sean O'Malley versus Cheeto the first time. And that one was it was the first time I actually remember someone politely changing their mind when I was arguing with them on the internet. I very rarely argue with people on the internet because I don't think there's much of a point to it.
Right.
But I remember it before when I wasn't so wise. I was discussing this with someone about Sean O'Malley right after he lost to Cheeto. He was like, he's a fraud. And I was like, man, I was like, he's super young. He lost to Cheetah. I was like, otherwise, man, he's got all the skill. I was like, give it a little bit of time, man. This isn't boxing, and we don't want it to be where you have to be undefeated. And he was like, you know what, man, you're right. He's got plenty of time. I think he'll be good. And I was like, whoa. I was like, that's never happened before. And he ended up being the champion. And on a greater note on that, people do this like you were talking about because I had a big 9-year hiatus in between me doing Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu in between high school and the present day. But, the more that you do that now, one, the more that you appreciate how many amazing fighters there are across the world. Think about the average blue or purple belt. And I don't know what belt you are, but like think about the average blue or purple belt just in any jiu-jitsu class that you might run into across the country. And they get to your back and they sink in a choke and you don't even know what happened. Think about how many people there are across the world that can do that and kickbox and wrestle all to that level in almost every country on earth. And to a similar point, dude, if the MMA fans right now had been around when Brock Lesnar came to the UFC and he got tapped by Frank Mir, they would have said he got fraud checked. It's not.
Absolutely.
It's not the appropriate use of the term. And to even a larger extent, we see with the light heavyweight division right now, where Jamal Hill, for all his faults, people love to make fun of that guy. I get why people love to hate him. But at the end of the day, man, that guy held the UFC light heavyweight belt. I don't care if he beat a 40-plus-year-old Glover. I don't care. I don't care if his footwork, if you slow it down and you're on your couch at home, it looks bad. I don't really care, man. That guy won the UFC light heavyweight belt. There's no UFC fighters ever that you will ever catch me on my podcast saying suck. The most that I will go to is with people like at the bottom rung, let's say, of the UFC middleweight division, because there's an entire lower tier that I don't think really belongs at the UFC. I will express that sentiment that I just did, that I don't think that they're good for the product. But that's about it. And this was a good example. Dude, DeRitter has started off his UFC career beating Gerald Meerschaert, Kevin Holland, and Bo Nickel. Put some respect on that man's name for the love of God. To win the heavyweight title 2-1 with that physique is against Ong Lan Sang, who, was himself a dominant 2 division champion for years there and won. So this is something that we see all the time. And the thing is, though, there's not that much point of getting pissed off about it, man. Like, this is a part of the fandom of this sport. People will always say, oh, MMA Twitter, that's the worst group of sports fans on the internet. It's like, dude, that's because a lot of MMA fans don't really follow other sports. Dude, people have been murdered over Auburn versus Alabama. Like, I don't know too many people that have been murdered over UFC fandom. Are you think of any?
Probably not very many. I'm sure there has been a case, but probably not many.
I'm sure there has, and who knows what anybody has done to John Jones to deserve his wrath. We were talking about that the other day too, man. And hey, congratulations! Let's raise a glass to Tom Aspinall, who just broke the record for the longest reigning interim champion in UFC history. Record that
Yeah.
should never be broken. Well, and so 138. Last little point I want to touch on before we get
Yeah.
into UFC 315 and make some picks is John Jones. And we can do this quickly because here's what I hate about John Jones. Here's the thing. I don't think he's a good guy. I think there's a billion reasons he's given us as to why. What I really don't like about him is the fans that
Mm.
this weird pretentiousness. I I won't mention a name, and I doubt he's listening. I've had someone on this show from an account on Twitter you might have seen. I think that they're respected. I respect him, but he's a New York fan. And my co-host on this show before I started running this mainly solo, he was a New York boxing and MMA fan. They both had the same things to say about John Jones, and it bothers me to no end. Well, I don't want to judge people off of their worst days. He's got clearly has some psychological issues going on, and dude, you name me one other person on the planet that you don't judge based on their worst days. What about Jeffrey Dahmer, 138? Did we judge him based on his worst days? That's the most ridiculous cop out of just saying, like, yeah, he's a piece of shit, man. Like, I can, if anybody else, let's just say, for example, and I'm not making any political affiliation at all here. Let's say that either Joe Biden or Donald Trump had taken a Bentley, wrecked it into a pregnant woman's car, and drove off. Do you think people would judge them on those worst days, 138?
Probably at least a little bit, yeah. I mean, you'd have the people similar to John Jones where they won't, and they just won't admit fault to their side. Identity politics is a real problem in the United States, so that is a thing. However, it's very, very much following that same parallel with the John Jones fans. So that's actually a really good example.
So, with that, I think we could talk about that forever, but let's get into. Do you have
So,
any? Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I want to add. So it's funny you brought up John Jones because I'm actually working on a video right now, outside of just like my fight breakdowns. I like to throw in some other stuff, right? And it's 5 MMA scumbags worse than John Jones. And believe it or not, there are some.
Oh,
John Jones is an absolute piece of garbage, but there are much worse.
Cedric DeMoss is building his case on the daily basis.
Yeah, seriously, dude. He's on the way there. There's a few of them. I mean, if you look through, I'm not going to spoil who I've got in the video. You're going to have to tune in and watch it, but there are quite a few. So I'm probably going to have to make a sequel because 5 is not enough after I've been doing some research on it and pulling up some names I'd forgotten about. And yeah, there's some real pieces of work. So yeah, there's a lot of them.
Oh, and I'm sure, and especially if you get before the year 2010, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
We know where the sport was at the time. And the last thing I'll say about John Jones, because I will never classify myself as a hater of anybody. I do hate some people. There is a difference. But 138, one thing you will never hear me say is that John Jones is not one of the 2 or 3 most talented fighters I've ever seen in my entire life. It's what bothers me so much about it. I think that he doesn't care really about his fans. I don't think really that he could after all this amount of time. The people that have given you every chance in the world and continue to support you, and whatever problems you got going on, man. Are we talking about MMA? Does not everybody come into this sport with a ton of demons at this level, or at least a lot of them? Chris Lieben cleaned up his act pretty well, and he had plenty of demons. But you will never hear me say that John Jones is not one of the 2 most amazing fight talents I keep it right up there with GSP, and that those guys are just physically, athletically, they're the prototypes for what a perfect fighter is supposed to be. So as much as I can, dick on the character of John Jones, every time I see him fight, it is a marvel. It is. And when I saw him walk out to fight Cyril Gahn and saw what his body looked like at heavyweight, I was agape. I could not believe it. So that's what I'll always say is I will never use that to say John Jones, he's not in the GOAT conversation. Dude, of course he is in the greatest of all time conversation. I think it's a stupid conversation anyway in every sport. I don't like it. And ESPN has made, an entire living off of just talking about who the greatest of all time is in basketball. But, John Jones is one of the greatest fighters of all time. It's why I wish we could have, it's why it's a shame that we've seen it play out this way. But dude, we got 12 fights for UFC 315. And
Yeah, we do.
it's been a good series of fight nights too, in front of live crowds. And we're going back to the Apex next week, and I think reality is going to hit hard. But starting off, we got the main event for the welterweight title. Belal Muhammad and Jack Della Maddalena. JDM is the plus 165 underdog. Belal Muhammad, the minus 190 favorite. This is one where I'm completely comfortable going money line either way that you end up liking the person. But I want to get your takes on this first. I know that this is when like Belal inspires a lot of strong feelings, and JDM just by nature of getting this title shot has inspired a lot of strong feelings. People are comparing it to Steve Ercik's title shot, which I don't think is accurate. But I understand the comparison. So, what are your thoughts on the main event?
Yeah, I think it's a good fight stylistically because it's very much like pure like MMA boxer versus kind of just a pressure fighter, right? Like Bilal Muhammad used to be like wrestle first kind of guy, but now he's just a pressure fighter. Like he'll mix in the strikes, he'll mix up the wrestling, he'll do what he has to do. He picks a good game plan, but he's a pressure fighter. And I think there are a couple of things where Bilal's going to struggle with the fact that I think JDM is going to be hard to break under pressure. I mean, we saw how he came back against Gilbert Burns. And so I think that's going to be a challenge for him. But at the same time, I think it's going to be a really hard challenge for JDM to be able to stop the offense of Bilal Muhammad because the guy, even if you aren't breaking, he doesn't stop either. So it becomes one of those things where it's like, okay, who's going to be on offense more than defense? And I feel like that's going to be Bilal Muhammad. So for JDM, I feel like he's going to be needing to put a stop to the offense of Bilal somehow, whether that be like a knockout or, somehow get Bilal backpedaling, but we just don't see that. So I feel like he has to finish him because I can't imagine a world where Bilal is just covering up, backing up, and like willing to like point fight as he backs away. I just don't think that's a thing. So the dude's going to keep coming at him, and he's either going to get the takedowns, he's going to start boxing him in the pocket and doing his own work, and he's going to do that until he gets the win or his lights get shut out. So I've got to side with Bilal, but I could see an argument for JDM because he's going to be hard to put away and his resilience is shown and he does not get tired. So it's a good fight. It's a really competitive fight, I think.
And I mean, you look at JDM's resume in the UFC, obviously unblemished, but did have to eke out 2 split decisions against people you would hope that wouldn't happen against necessarily. Kevin Holland, that's a little bit more understandable, especially stylistically. The Gilbert Burns fight was, a breakthrough for JDM for sure. And that's the place Gilbert occupies now is like, that's a perfect gatekeeper fight. You don't necessarily expect someone to get a title shot off of it, but it's kind of like with like flyweight right now where or even where light heavyweight was where it's not necessarily like who's the number one contender. It's like who's ready to fight when like Pereira is ready to fight or when Pantoja is ready to fight because that's how Asakura got his shot. It was opportunistic. And there's plenty of young guys at welterweight that are like in that conversation that we want to see work their way up. I think that like it's a little too early for JDM in this one. I think that Belal, if you would have told me in 2021 that this dude was going to be the UFC champion, it was mind blowing. And he's the kind of guy that puts you to sleep because you think like, oh, this guy, like he's the champion. Anybody could take this belt. But with how he beat Leon Edwards over the course of the better part of 5 rounds, I was shocked at what I was seeing. The offense that he was firing out, and Leon's a little bit too patient, and that's what almost killed him in the second fight with Kamaru.
Yep.
I think JDM would be very smart to start off swarming. Like start off with a heavy pace, get Belal like instinctively moving on his back foot. I don't know if Belal's going to give him that chance. And I think that the smartest pick here is probably Belal by decision, which is plus 100. Belal even money line minus 190 is not horrible. I mean, because when your only finish in years is a knockout of Sean Brady, it's like, all right, okay, maybe money line minus 190 is not that bad. But I don't think JDM plus 165 is terrible. I don't think it's a terrible selection at all. The thing that does concern me about Belal is, one fight in 2023, one fight in 2024. And he's taken on more of this celebrity hated heel status that I think we've seen become a problem for a lot of guys as their activity level goes down. I think it was a problem for Leon and Kamaru as they prepared to only fight each other for a long time. And they're so those are the things that do concern me. But I think that you got to go, Bilal money line or Bilal plus 100 for a decision.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Bilal's the type of guy that you could keep backing as an underdog for so long. It's kind of weird seeing him as a favorite now, but it seems warranted to me. So I don't know.
And next up, we got a women's flyweight title match. Valentina Shevchenko and Manon Fiorot. Manon Fiorot is the minus 139 favorite. The Bullet, the plus 119 underdog. Valentina, of course, coming off recapturing the title over Alexa Grasso following a draw. This is also a concern of mine historically when you have focused now, close to 2 or 3 years thinking about only the same person. I don't think historically it ends up working well, at least in the immediate short term for people. But ultimately, only one loss dating back to September of 2017. We could talk for hours just about what Valentina Shevchenko has done in the UFC. It was known when she came into the UFC that she was going to be a title contender. She was just one of those people that you knew it was only a matter of time. And, quickly putting herself against proven names. 12-1 as a professional, can't believe anybody beat her before the UFC. The current stretch of her last 5 wins is Mayra Bueno Silva, Jennifer Maia, Caitlin Sermonara, formerly Chukagian, Bug Rose, and Aaron Blanchfield, all by unanimous decision. For DFS purposes, she's landed anywhere from 58 to 172 strikes across those 5 fights. I think that, obviously, Valentina has her kickboxing pedigree and her skill set, and she's a very well-rounded mixed martial artist. I am concerned when you do spend years just preparing for the same opponent and you get older in the process, born in 1988. Fira, I think like at times, every time that she's slowed down a little bit and looked a little bit more vulnerable, she's always come back the next time and looked even more impressive than the most impressive performance that we've seen up to this point. I think that kind of similar to the main event where I think a bet on Fira minus 139 money line or by decision plus 115. I think those are perfectly fine. I do not blame anybody at all for going Shevchenko plus 119 or by decision plus 190. I have to favor Firo here because I do think at a certain point the guard passes. At a certain point the torch is passed. You're just trying to pick the point at which it does.
Yeah, I definitely have heard a lot of people on that side, and I can't go against Chevy here. I gotta stick with my girl here. She has every tool in the toolbox at this point. She's not missing anything. Like this girl, she's showing up to the job site with a toolbox so large that she's got to have an extra helper just to locate some of these tools in this toolbox here. Like this woman's got it all. The thing that I think is going to pay her the most success is her ability to catch kicks. She didn't have to do that a lot against Grasso. She did a little, but with Grasso, she just wanted to get to the takedowns because Grasso's more of a boxer than a kicker. Viro is much more of a kicker. She will throw hands, don't get me wrong, but she kicks a lot. And Shevchenko's shown that she has the ability to catch kicks at a really high clip. And I think that is going to be something that she uses to have a lot of success here, because if she gets the fight to the mat, I understand that Fiodo's hard to take down and she's a strong woman, but once it gets to the mat, I favor Shevchenko quite a bit. And it's one of those things where Fiodo's only loss is to Leah McCourt, believe it or not, and that's way back in the day, but Leah McCourt was able to get her to the mat, and that's how she was able to do it. I'm not saying that she's the same fighter as she was when she fought her back then. I'm saying that Valentina Shevchenko has been nearly a complete package this whole time. So I think Shevchenko can get it done, especially as an underdog. I think that if you are on the Firo side, it is going to be a close fight and it's going to be sweaty. And taking that strap from Valentina, I think is going to be tough. So I've got to side with her, especially at dog money. I could see a case for either side, but I got to go with the girl that has more tools in the toolbox.
And this is one where I could see a prop on a split decision too for either one.
Yep.
And imagine that Fira ends up becoming the UFC champion. Maybe not this weekend, but at any other point. And imagine at some point we get her versus Dakota Dechiva.
That'd be great.
And next up, dude. Oh boy, this is another weird one for Aldo. But we got a bantamweight matchup between Jose Aldo and Ayman Zahabi. Zahabi is the plus 182 underdog. Aldo, the minus 212 favorite. Aldo got a, and I hate this because in Cody of Wager Wars, he went on a Mario Batista, hate streak after this. And I don't blame people for, no one wants to see you matched up with a legend and put on a boring fight. At the same time, I can never blame the guy that takes the boring route when the other person had the option to do something about it. We see that so much, and I can never blame the person who put a person on the cage. I can only end up blaming the person who allowed themselves to be on the cage. But Aldo, one win out of his last three, to his credit. Now, the 3 fights ago, that was August of 2022 at UFC 278, and that was a unanimous decision loss to Marab. Has the unanimous decision win over Jonathan Martinez, and he's coming off the split decision loss to Mario Batista. Wins over Cheeto Vera, Pedro Munoz, and Rob Font from December of 2020 to December of 2021. Zahabi finds himself on a 5-fight winning streak. A first-round knockout of Draco Rodriguez. He beat Ricky Tercios. A first-round knockout of Aori K. Ling. Unanimous decision over to Javid Basharat. And a unanimous decision over Pedro Munoz, landing 109 strikes to Munoz's 95 last November. I will let you take the lead on this one. What do you think of this bantamweight matchup?
Yeah, so first to touch on the argument about holding someone up against a cage. In the famous words of Jonathan Pierce, get up and do some. And if you can't get up and do some, I guess it's your fault for being stuck there. So I can't fault Batista for that, although I understand he's not going to make any fans doing that. Yeah. But he's winning another fight, and darn it, that's a good name to have on your resume, so I don't blame him. In this fight, it's essentially a fight between two guys who have a similar style at this point in their career. They're, for the most part, going to be distant strikers that are picking their shots well. Zahabi in his last fight put up some numbers. Most of the time, we're going to see a guy picking his shots. He's going to be doing what he needs to do to land and not get hit. His striking defense is very, very good. Jose is very similar. The only difference for Jose is sometimes he'll get hit when he sticks around the pocket a little bit too long, but usually he's landing a whole lot when he goes into the pocket. So, we don't see him do that as much as he used to, but he still will do that. For me, they're so similar in their styles. They're similar in the age. Well, sort of. I mean, Jose could be like 45 and we just don't know it, but they're similar in those type of things. The thing that I think is different is the level of competition for Jose and his ability to continue to put high-level performances together. Now, he's not the same Aldo that was the champion for like a decade. He's not that same guy. He is still, in part there. He still somewhat has it, but he doesn't have it to that level. And I don't think Zahabi ever had it to that level. I don't think that's an insult to Zahabi either. I mean, Jose was one of the best fighters to ever walk the face of the earth, especially in the 145-pound division. Now he's at 135. He's doing darn good down here. I think he still has enough left in the tank to win, but I think the safest bet is this fight's probably going to decision 99 times out of 100, short of something crazy, because the way that these guys fight, their typical amounts of durability, I see a decision here, a close tit for tat scrap, and I got to side with Aldo, but it's not like a confident side.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on most of those points. I think that this is the kind of fight that they end up setting up for Aldo after the last one. Is we see like Zahabi has worked his way up to his name, having a little bit more respect on it than it did a couple years ago, and they want to see Aldo win. I think it'd be dumb to ignore that fact. That's part of the reason this matchup has been made, is because they want to see Aldo win, especially on a pay-per-view card. And I'm blanking on any like good analogies of similar matchups, but we've seen this before where a legend loses And I think we see him at bantamweight actually a good amount. I think that Frankie Edgar's probably gotten a couple of these.
Yep.
Like, and where it's like they lose, let's put him up against a guy where it's going to be fun. It's stylistically, it makes sense. It's half of Kevin Holland's fights at this point, minus the legend status. But I see Aldo winning this in a decision. That's not a bad line at minus 125. I think that's virtually the same as him to win, given the places that they're at in their career.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I think at decision is the way that it's going to go either way. The only thing you have to take into account is that obviously it's in front of the Canadian fans. However, Canadian judges seem to go against their own often. So that might be a little bit more for Aldo.
And I try to ignore it too, like as much as I can on the home fan, like unless it's a thing like it's the one fighter who's fighting in their hometown, and even that didn't work out this past weekend, but like home crowds do weird things to people. Some people cannot handle that. That's a little bit too much pressure and hype for some people. It's a good thing for some people. So I try to ignore it if I can. We saw Canada do really bad in front of their home crowd at one point. So who knows? But this next great card for women's flyweight. We got Alexa Grasso and Natalia Silva. Silva is the minus 240 favorite. Alexa Grasso, the plus 205 underdog. Now, my initial reaction to that is that people might be overreacting to Alexa Grasso's last fight. For sure. She looked unmotivated. She did not look the same as those first two fights with Valentina. I think that that's very fair to say. I think Alexa Grasso is one of those fighters that is kind of like Usyk, where like you're capable of great title fights, even if the path that got you to that title fight wasn't necessarily what you're used to seeing for someone who's going to get a title shot. She didn't look the same in those last two fights. And again, the concern of you've been thinking about the same person. You filmed a whole TV show about fighting the same person for years. And you came out that last one looking not the same version of yourself. On the same note of that, Natalia Silva. I've had Jasmine Jasdovicius on this podcast. I love Jasmine. And she is a super strong women's flyweight. She like physically strong. She has had a great run in the UFC. I was floored when I saw Natalia Silva's UFC debut against Jazz. She ate her up. She did. There's no getting around that. 96 strike to 31, and even that does not tell even close to the full story of what actually happened in that fight. And it's a weird thing about Natalia Silva. She does give up some control time. It is what concerns me in this matchup. And when you're getting Alexa Grasso plus 205. But again, this is one of those fighters that, you kind of look a little bit vulnerable maybe, or maybe not as impressive as you should against Andrea Lee and Vivian Araujo. And how she looked against Jessica Andrade was fantastic. Lands 117 strikes, only has 50 landed on her. Alexa Grasso is a great grappler, but I don't know if she's the kind of person that will get Natalia Silva down and keep her there for the amount of time that it'll take. I don't think you need to thread the needle. I think that if you want to go Alexa Grasso as a plus 200 underdog, can't fault you there, because I do think that line is an overreaction to the last fight with Valentina. But right now, I would say give me Natalia Silva by decision. That one is minus 150.
Yeah, so I think Natalia Silva wins, right? And I was waiting for this line to drop. And when it did, it opened at like a pick'em. So I immediately bet Natalia Silva, knowing that this line was going to get stupid. So now I'm trying to decide the best place to get the arbitrage going, right? It might be now. It might be tomorrow. It might be Saturday morning. I haven't decided yet, but I want, to make it so if basically what I want to do is make it so if Alexa wins, it's a wash. Like I didn't lose anything. I didn't win anything. But if Silva wins, I win a decent amount. That's what I'm hoping to do. We'll see what the line ends up being. Because I do think Silva wins at a pretty high clip. But I want to cover my tracks because it has moved so much. I think Silva is on her way to the top. And I think Grasso's at that stage where it's really tough to get back there after you just lost it. But in so many fights. I feel like Valentina won the draw. the draw that they had. I feel like that was Shevchenko that won that, and I think it was silly that there was a 10-8 in the fifth round. That was crazy. Just me. But so when it's like, okay, Grosso won the first fight. She was losing that fight until she wasn't. Good for her, though. That's amazing. But then she fought in the draw. And I think in her mind, she also knows that, like, yeah, I kind of got gifted a draw there. And then she gets dominated. And I feel like it's going to take a little bit to bounce back from that. I think Silva has a lot of things going for her right now. That win over Jasmine has aged amazing. I'm a huge fan of Jasmine as well. She's one of my favorites in the division. Actually, she probably is my favorite. Ooh, I don't know. It's such a stacked division. She's one of my favorites in the division for sure. So at one point, I need to interview that woman. I got to figure. We got to have to exchange that contact info there, huh? But yeah, I think Natalia Silva gets this one probably by decision. But it wouldn't surprise me if she gets a late finish too, because it's just where they're at in their careers.
And now this goofy ass fight. Next up, we got a lightweight matchup. And Kyle Prepelec. I haven't even had the time to get that one down. Versus Benoit Saint Denis. This was supposed to be an absolute banger. It was going to be Joel Alvarez versus BSD. And even the replacement that they did get is confusing. I think, a lot of people throw out Michael Dulfort as, the a more reasonable. But what are you going to do? You weren't going to, make anybody happy with anybody but Joel Alvarez. So
Didn't Kyle beat Dufort just not that long ago?
Yeah, it was by split decision.
Yeah.
Now that was in 2021.
Right.
For his career, that's not that long ago.
Correct.
To his credit, because he is like a super experienced guy, naturally been around a lot of the Canadian scene. I think fought. Is this the Kevin Lee, or is it a different? Yeah, he fought the Kevin Lee back a long time ago. Lost to him, but still has a little bit of Bellator experience. Not not much of quality. 0-2 in the UFC to Nordine Taleb and Austin Hubbard. Now he has one fight since April of 2023. That was against 25 and 29 Gustavo Wurlitzer, who he knocked out in the first round. And he's 35 years old. Not to sleep on that point either. Now, BSD coming off 2 straight losses, a knockout against Dustin Poirier, a knockout in the second round against Renato Moicano. How quickly things changed for that dude when he was being talked about as, this guy's going to contend for a lightweight title. Is he going to fight for the the BMF belt? And then how quickly that comes crashing down after you're a minus 200 something favorite against Dustin Poirier. What a world, what a sport this is. But not far separated from that 5-fight winning streak that got him to that spot in the first place, where he was finishing people left and right, both in the first and second round. I think that, right now I am seeing odds for this. He's minus 1,200. Minus 1,200. Prop-wise, maybe throw BSD inside the distance in a parlay. Maybe, because these late replacements do weird things, man. I'm not even that confident in that. Maybe BSD's trying to take things a little slower and get back on a winning path. You don't know where either guy's head's at there. And I think lately we've seen a lot of late replacement guys that were slept on come up and have better performances because there was less pressure. I think of Cameron Smotherman. I think of Felipe Dos Santos when he fought Starboy and had an admirable outing. You just never know. So if I was going to get crazy, and I'm not on this one, I do like BSD in the second round. But other than that, maybe stay away from this one.
Yeah. So I do believe they actually were scheduled to rematch Dufort and Profilek, or I think Profilek is how you say it.
It's Samurai MMA this weekend.
Yep. Yeah. So I think just looking at how the UFC probably did it is they said, well, this guy won the first time, so we'll take him. Because they probably didn't look much into it as past that. And rightfully so, it makes sense. It sounds like BSD didn't want to take any short notice, super tough matchups. Maybe that's just hearsay, but it sounds like that's the case. And I don't blame the dude. He's coming off 2 knockout losses. Sure, they're really good competition, but I understand why he didn't want to. With that said, I think BSD probably wins. I mean, it makes sense. However, if someone, gun to my head, I had to make a bet on this. I'm not going to bet on this fight. I have no intention of betting on this fight. If I had to, though, over 1.5 and just hope. You know what I mean? Just hope and a prayer, because sometimes it just creeps over the 1.5, and I bet that's plus money. I haven't seen the odds for that, but it's probably plus money. So I would take that.
I think it is actually. I think it's like here I'll find it. Plus 165. I think that's the move. If you're gonna make a move on this one, I think that's it. God, trying to pick those, man, because remember there was a time not that long ago where if you were a late replacement, it was a given that you were gonna get slaughtered, and now
Yep.
it's just not the case. So now talking about a guy that didn't fare so well in Canada. We've got a welterweight matchup between Mike Malott and Charles Radke. Now, 138, I will tell you, I'm not a fan of the personality of Charles Radke. For the one thing, just for the one soundbite of him, you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you mean.
Asking for the money from the reporters at the press conference. Nobody did. Everybody was like, no. And he was like, all right, see you. And I was like, what?
Super awkward.
But like, that is also so tone deaf for a fighter trying to like come up. I am all for people getting their money, but hey, Charles, there's a bunch of ways you can get your money. Besides that, it is only to your advantage to talk to reporters, and you want people to like you or you want people to hate you. And I don't know if enough people hated him from that. I think a lot of people just disregarded him for that. Maybe that's me. Whereas like I don't. All right, like that's fine. Anyway. Malott, good to see him come back from a win after that come from behind loss at the hands of Neil Magny in Canada. I guess that's a bad way to phrase it. He was winning, he ended up losing, late in that fight. And we've seen him against good opponents. Past Mickey Gall, Johan Linetzi and especially Adam Fugit, nothing to sneeze at all. Trevin Giles, nothing to sneeze at. Charles Radke, though, does concern me as the underdog here. Especially when you're because I was saying Smellsburger last time out too in November, and he put that to bed real quick. First round knockout of Smellsburger, first round knockout of Gilbert Urbina, decision win over Blood Diamond in his UFC debut at UFC 293. Only UFC losses to Carlos Paredes. So it's one of those things where it's like, the wins I don't really care about, but the loss, what do I take from that? I'll let you give your pick first on this one, man, because I'm deliberating.
Yeah. So first thing, I think what Radke was trying to do with that asking for money thing was make a joke, and then when he realized, oh, that didn't go right, then he just ran with it, and it made it way worse. I feel like that was what happened. I could be wrong, but I think that was it. That said, Chuck Buffalo has been printing money for me. He keeps coming in as an underdog. I've bet him in every single one of his UFC fights. It didn't work out against Protest, obviously, but every other fight, dude's just printing money. So I'm not going to stop here. I'm going to bet him one more time. I got Chuck Buffalo. I'm not saying he's going to win for sure. But what I'm saying is if you give me Chuck Buffalo as an underdog, I'll throw a little something on it because the guy just keeps doing it. So give me Chuck Buffalo. He's got that nasty lead hook. He's got a super opportunistic submission game. He has the tools. Mike Malott's very skilled as well, but he lacks in the striking defense. And, man, that left hook is nasty. So I'm taking Buffalo.
And Radke is a dog. Like, I will
Yep.
have than that. Like, he brings pressure, and that has proven to be a problem for Mike. We've seen it on multiple occasions throughout his professional career. And it's not even so much like that I love Radke here. I like him as plus 167, but I just don't know what to do with Malone. Like, I don't know what to bet. I think submissions, it just tends to be, for me, like as a method of victory, just a little bit too specific at plus 330. Obviously, it's on the table, but I just don't know what to do with him here. And Radke as an underdog, and I think that a lot of people are going to be thinking Malone because there's no way he can lose in Canada again. Sure, he can. That doesn't matter at all. What matters is can he beat the guy that he's going to be in the octagon with. So I think you've swayed me 138. I think I'm going to go with old Chucky Buffalo there too. And next up, we've got a women's flyweight matchup. Speak of devil. We got Jessica Andrade and Jasmine Jazz Duvicious. Jasmine Jazz Duvicious, the minus 300 favorite. Andrade, the plus 250 underdog. Maybe the old me would have said, like, that's too high of a number. I'm going to go with Jessica. Not, especially not after seeing, like, Marina of late. Maybe especially not like what does a Mackenzie Dern win on any given night? It could be an awesome win. It could mean not a whole lot. That depends on Mackenzie Dern. The way that she got eaten up by Natalia Silva, the fact that she has lost now 4 of her last 6 fights, been finished in 3 of them as well by Blanchfield, Janan, and Tatiana Suarez. 3 wins ago was Lauren Murphy in 2023. So credit to Jessica Andrade, she's been super active. I think that I have to, like, you could say Jasmine inside the distance. You could, I think it would probably come by submission. I think that TKO is within the realm of possibility. So, like, inside the distance for Jasmine makes sense. But really, like, Jasmine is just a really effective, well-rounded fighter. She's got a great skill set. And Jasmine by decision, plus 115. Jasmine inside the distance, plus 160. I'm gonna go I'm gonna go Jasmine inside the distance, plus 160.
Yeah. So for me, let's put it this way, if Jazz Devicius loses on this card, I've lost my backside because I am very much invested in her winning in this fight. I sent it when she was minus 265, sent it. So she needs to win or my night is ruined no matter what else happens. I could get every other fight on the card correct and still lose. So we're big on Jasmine this week. I think she wins pretty comfortably. Andrade has a lot of tools, a lot of skills. She's not done well at flyweight. And if you're going to be undersized at flyweight, Jazz Devicius is not the girl you want to be fighting because that woman is, I mean this in the nicest way possible. That woman's a hoss. And that is not something you usually want to say about a woman. But yeah, she's a very big, sturdy woman, and she's going to toss Jessica around. Now, Jessica's got power. She can throw hands. She's got a massive disadvantage in the reach. And I think even though she's the cleaner striker, she's going to be getting hit long before she can land her shots. And I think if Jasmine gets this fight to the mat, that's a wrap. Like I don't see Andrade getting back up. So yeah, give me Jazz Devicius. She's actually my most confident pick on the card. I feel like she gets this done. I would be more confident in her than I am in Benoit Saint-Denis, even in this new matchup. And I know he's a huge favorite. If it was just same odds for the two of them, I'm still taking Jasmine. So that's what I'm at.
And based on my, however long my conversation was with her, I think she would appreciate your description of her. She even fought at strawweight, which is mind blowing to think about, like early in her professional career. And the crazy thing is, Jasmine is like a couple years older than Jessica, which is shocking. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't care about that at all because what I care about is that Jasmine optically just looks so like there's so much in the tank and that she continues to improve. And Jessica, there's just a little too much mileage there against really, really good fighters. We've seen it optically not look as good as it used to. And that's going to be I think Jasmine could show some new wrinkles to her game on this one. And I think that finishing this one with, a TKO is a very real possibility. So 138, we got 5 fights left. You cool to stick around for a couple more at least?
Yeah, I can stay around for all of them if you want.
Whatever you want to do, man. And next up, we got Modestas Bukauskas and Ian Kudalaba, the most light heavyweight matchup on earth.
Yeah.
Ian Kudalaba, the minus 105 underdog. Bukauskas, the minus 115 favorite. Now, talking about Ian Kudalaba, proudly, I did have him as an underdog against Ibo Aslan. I think that was probably a pretty popular pick. Not to, I think there was a lot of people on that.
Yep, same.
And now he's won 3 of his last 4. Against Tanner Bozer, whatever that means. I always liked Tanner Bozer, just couldn't string it together. Ivan Erslan by split decision and Ibo Aslan. Not the same 2 people in a row. Ivan Erslan and Ibo Aslan, 2 different people. The loss in between there was by unanimous decision of Felipe Lenz. Not as bad of a loss as I think people might make it out to be. I've always kind of liked Lenz too in that capacity. Kudalaba, the most notable thing about him is how many killers he has had to fight over the span of his UFC run. Multiple champions, multiple championship contenders. Those losing streaks are not nearly as bad as his record would indicate. Bukowskis, winner of 2 in a row, finished Marcin Prochnio in a fight where he was probably losing in the 3rd round until Prochnio, if I recall correctly, and then gets a first-round knockout of Rafael Cerqueira February of this year. You go back 3 fights, that win against Zach Palga, that definitely has not aged fantastically. Bukowskis is a guy that can hang around, but I think that I think if Tyson Pedro's taking you down twice, I think if Ian Kudalaba fights a smart fight here, and that's not a given. We've seen that before, but like, what can Ian Kudalaba do? He can take you down. He can hold you there, and he can beat you up. Now, is he gonna gas at some point? For sure. Will he do what this is like? Can he wear out Bukowskis and damage him enough through the course of 1.5, 2 rounds? Take the first 2 rounds, and even if he has to give up the third, does he still come out on top? I am willing to bet as a very slight underdog that he does. So straight up, I'll go Ian Kudalaba money line -105.
Yeah, so for me, this is odd because I have a really good track record of picking Kudalaba fights, as I think I've only been wrong about him once, and that was the Tanner Boser fight, because believe it or not, I was on Tanner Boser. Early stoppage, by the way. But the opposite is true for Bukowskis. I have a horrible track record of picking Bukowskis fights. So I don't really know where to go with this one. I've sided with Bukowskis, and the only reason I've sided with him is because I can trust his cardio. But that's it. I don't trust anything else about him. I don't think that he's like leaps and bounds ahead of Kudalaba. And in the first round, he might look leaps and bounds beneath Kudalaba. But at the same time, I think as the fight gets past that first round, if Bukowskis is still in existence at that point, I think he probably starts to take over, kind of like he did against Prachnio. I had Prachnio in that fight. That's how bad I am at picking Bukowskis fights. The only reason I switched over to taking Bukowskis last minute over Tyson Pedro is because I guess I can't give away my source, but somebody gave me the tip that Pedro's retiring and that he wasn't really going to be all in this fight. But they told me that like the day of the fight. So other than that, I would have had Pedro in that one. So yeah, for me, it's Bukowskis, but I mean, like this is zero confidence here.
And this is going to be another tough one and another 205-pound fight. Navajo Sterling, Ivan Erzlan. Navajo Sterling is the -265 favorite. Erzlan the +225 underdog. I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Yeah, I feel better about Navajo Sterling in this one. And the reason why is like I understand Erzlan will probably have some semblance of a grappling advantage, but historically he's not a grapple first fighter. He is a boxer. Like he'll throw the odd leg kick here and there, but he's pretty much a boxer. He's got a stiff jab. He's willing to come forward with some decent power, keeps a high guard, very much wants to throw hands, right? Navajo Sterling, on the other hand, kickboxing style, I think he's going to be able to have more tools on the feet. And I do think Erzlan has some potential to go for the grappling exchanges and try to win that way. But he, like I said, he's not a grapple first guy. And I think he's going to try the striking first. And he's not going to win a striking matchup against a guy like Navajo Sterling. So I feel like Navajo gets it done. I'm taking Sterling. I feel pretty good about him at anything under -300. I'm sure he's over -300 now. He wasn't earlier in the week, but or at least end of last week. But yeah, I feel like he should get this done at a high clip.
Yeah, and I think what I'm struggling with is how I think Navajo Sterling wins. Do I think he goes the distance, or do I think he puts him away? I think that this matchup is a little bit more stylistically inclined for Navajo to get the finish. It does have 4 knockouts out of 6 professional fights. I think that historically, the people that don't get knocked out by Navajo Sterling are the people that give him a ton of respect and don't and deliberately try to get knocked out. I don't see that's not how anybody from KSW fights for the most part, and certainly not Ivan Erzlan. So I think that he'll engage. I think he'll try to bring the fight to Navajo Sterling as much as possible. I think Navajo Sterling just a little bit too slick for him and a little bit too slick overall with his striking. Professional kickboxing and Muay Thai experience for Navajo Sterling. He's Sterling by knockout -105.
I like it.
And now, next up, for having two people on here and having a general MMA discussion before, we're making pretty good time, 138. Next up, we
Good to
got
hear.
a middleweight matchup between Marc-Andre Barriault and Bruno Silva. Barriault, MAB, is the -140 favorite. Why is he always a -140 favorite? I feel like that's every single time.
Always.
Line never deviates. Bruno Silva, the +120 underdog. So MAB, coming on 3 straight losses. This is a guy that has been very respectable at the middleweight division for quite some time. He's fought a lot of tough people in his own right. You have to go back, though, to June of 2023 when he got 2 wins in a row. And even his last 4 wins, dude, that date back to September of 2021, they don't look great in hindsight. You know, he did well in some of the, like, he landed 118 strikes in September of 2021 on Dolce Lungiambula, who I always wanted to be good, but he was never going to be.
Nope.
Jordan Wright was one of those wins. He submitted him. Marc-Andre Barriault has been a wrecking crew for that group of middleweights I was talking about before that I just don't think should actually be in the UFC. The only thing missing here is him fighting Dumas and Brundage, and I don't want to put Petrosky in there, but he's getting close. And we've seen them all. So now he's on a 3-fight losing streak against good competition. You know, split decision loss in a fight that could have gone his way against Chris Curtis. A few different things have gone differently. Knocked out by Joe Pyfer, knocked out by Dustin Stoltzfus. And by the way, the other 2 wins, his more recent, Julian Marquez and Arik Anders.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a tough sell. Bruno Silva on a 4-fight losing streak. His most recent win. Brad Tavares, you go back to his second most recent win at UFC 269. It was a knockout of Jordan Wright. Very similarly situated guys. You know, Bruno Silva lost 6 of his last 7 to Pereira, Mearshart, Brennan Allen, Shara Bullock, Chris Weidman, and Ismail Nardiev. MAB money line -140. Like I don't think you need to go method of victory here. I don't want to. I think that like maybe the Tavares win is a little bit more impressive than what MAB has done like over the last few years. Maybe, but the consistency is always there for MAB. I think against a certain class of opponents. I hear such a similar resume here over the last few years, but ultimately Bruno Silva has done more losing, and maybe not in as devastating a fashion, but the more you lose to good opponents, it does wear on you. And to take that loss to Chris Weidman, however it happened, however that ended up coming to be, I still think that puts mileage on you. Give me MAB -140 money line.
Yeah, so this one's tough for me because you've got Barrio coming off of 2 brutal knockouts. And if there's one thing Bruno Silva has done in his career, it's knocked people out. He's got 23 professional wins, if I'm not mistaken, 20 of which are by knockout. So, I mean, if he's got anything, it's knockout power. For MAB, he does his best work in that dirty boxing style up against the cage. If he gets you up against the cage and starts dirty boxing you, he's going to win. Silva is durable. So here's how I think about it. If you have a side that you like, you play that side by their method only. For me, I think MAB probably wins a decision. And I think that he could finish, but it's unlikely. So I say decision only. That line is probably okay for MAB. If you're looking for the Silva side, you go decision, no action, because Silva's still tough. So I think decision, no action on the Silva side is probably okay as well. Technically, you could play both. I think then you're getting a little greedy, but you could play both. I think MAB probably gets a decision here, but I think it's one of those fights where the whole time, if you've got that ticket, you're going to be clenched and you're going to be real nervous.
No, absolutely. And I feel like there's been a lot of those over the last few months where it's like, I think either this guy wins by decision and the other guy knocks him out. As simple as that is, and why it almost sounds like, way more fights. It's actually not, it's not as often that situation comes up. And that is a tough one. Next up, featherweight matchup, Daniel Santos and Jung Young Lee. Jung Young Lee is the -115 favorite. Santos, the -105 underdog. Now, talking about Daniel Santos, winner of 2 in a row. Only loss being to Julio Arce in his UFC debut. That was now over 3 years ago. Since then, he has knocked out John Castaneda. That's a solid win. And a unanimous decision win in nice fashion over Johnny Munoz, who I believe his last fight was with UWC 56, like pretty recently. So that's what he's been up to. Still relatively young. I say this because I was born in 1997, but Daniel Santos born in 1995. Not old, definitely for, maybe for someone who's only had 3 fights and has had that level of activity. But then you got Lee, um, cut his teeth and road to UFC. He's 11-2 as a pro, also born in 1995. He actually will have a 6-inch reach advantage in this fight, and is 3 inches taller. And it's good to see somebody, at least get that win over Blake Builder and kind of get that monkey off your back once you're out of road to UFC, because it's a vacuum. You don't know how those guys are going to do outside of it. We've seen polar opposites, for different people. Yep. Coming off of a bad loss by first round knockout to Hyder Emil. The statistics don't look good, getting out before in that first round. Even in Lee's decision wins, it's not a huge margin of victory, there's, it got taken down 5 times by Yiza in that road to UFC finale and won by split decision. Blake Builder, it was a good win, but like he's not a statistically significant fighter, which is my concern here, because Daniel Santos is good for volume. He lands powerful and damaging shots. You get him down 2 or 3 times, he might get you down 2 or 3 times. And I don't know if Lee, the way he fights, I don't know if it's designed to get a 3-round decision victory over Daniel Santos right now. Now, I think that this decision could go either way. I'm fine with either of these guys' money line, really. Like, we're still learning about Lee, and I think he's got plenty of room to grow. That's for sure. I'm fine with either of these guys' money line. If it's me, I'm probably going with the slight underdog in Santos, but I was wrong on part of this part of my analysis on Daniel Marcos this past weekend was similar, and that ended up being wrong. But like Santos by split decision plus 750, Lee by split decision plus 900. I think those are, those could absolutely be worth a sprinkle.
Yeah. So I find myself on the other side. I'm on the Lee side, and I don't think so. His loss to Hyder Emil, sure, it didn't look great because he was just getting landed on, but the dude never went down. The dude just was still in it. Like, as far as like, he was cognizant at the time, but he was just not being able to do anything back. And Hyder's still undefeated. So like, the guy's pretty gosh darn good. So there's that. You got to give him a little bit of grace in that one, I think. So, not too bad. For Santos, he's a guy that's had a ton of canceled fights. He struggles to make the weight class for 135, which is where he typically fights. But he's too small for 145. I think the size disadvantage for him is going to be pretty significant here when we see them face off, towards the fight day. You're going to say, oh, okay, Lee is quite a bit bigger than him here. And I think that's going to be prevalent, especially with that big reach advantage, the decent height advantage. Another thing that I think we're going to see is that Santos is very boomer bust, right? The guy lands his strikes at a very low percentage. It's like 20-something% accuracy. He also has a miserable striking defense. But when he hits you, you know about it, right? He's throwing these spinning side kicks that are excellent. He spins a little bit too much, but the side kicks are solid. He does a lot of really big stuff, and when it lands, it's awesome. But he misses a lot. And he's the type of guy who will fight like it's a car wreck every single time he fights. But Young Lee loves that. I mean, sure, Hyder Emil was able to get him out of there in a car wreck, but most fighters aren't going to do that to Lee. I think Lee is able to embrace the chaos and actually come out on top. So I'm going to take Lee to get this one done. He was an underdog up until, I think, today. So I think yesterday he was still an underdog. So I think that line is flipping. So I guess if you backed Lee earlier, like last week or earlier this week, you could probably arbitrage there.
And now, this line's correct. This is one I think you could still take pretty heavy advantage of right now. Curious to get your take on this one. Starting off the card, we will have a bantamweight matchup between Brad Katona and Beksad Almakan. Brad Katona a two-time tough winner. Hard to do. Very few people can even get themselves into that spot. I know people don't like Brad Katona for a variety of reasons. I had his, I don't know if they're still dating, but his then girlfriend Katie Saul, I had her on the podcast too. She's very sweet. Love Katie Saul. Um, Brad Katona is one of the more interesting skill sets that in the UFC bantamweight division. Win or loss, it's never not been a unanimous decision in the UFC. And that is across a large sample over the course of 6 years for him. And that's 2 Ultimate Fighter runs too. Not really an impressive name that he's beaten the entire time. What the best win is Cody Gibson, I would say, probably where he landed 160 strikes. Jesse Butler, that was a vintage Brad Katona performance. He does. How do you even describe this? Like, it's never that much volume for the most part. It's never a bunch of takedowns. It's just a little bit of everything. Sometimes, and all these wins, just a little bit more than you every round. You know, at least 2 out of 3. It's going to be close in a lot of those rounds. He's a tough guy to beat by decision, even though, you know, ultimately he's 4-4 technically in the UFC with those Ultimate Fighter runs. But when he fought even Hunter Azor, Marab, which I'm not going to blame him for that, even, you know, being 6 years ago. Garrett Armfield, G. Matsumoto. There's always something a little bit lacking. You know, the striking isn't all the way there. He's not that good of a wrestler. Certainly not like an awesome offensive grappler when he gets to the ground. He's just a solid fighter, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Bexot, first of all, I love Octagon with a C. I love that organization. It's a slept on organization because, you know, you can watch all their fights on YouTube, by the way, folks, you know, when those events are happening. And some great talent out of the country of Kazakhstan goes, you know, through those ranks. Bexot is 11-2. The Turan Warrior, 27 years old, finishing people left and right coming into the UFC in Octagon and in UAE Warriors, which is another incredibly reputable organization. So if you just look at the last few years, like his sample of opponents and in that part of the world, your sample of opponents can be manipulated for sure. But, you know, his UFC debut being against Umar Nurmagomedov, first of all, sorry that's your UFC debut. That's a rough.
Seriously.
2024. And he got dominated, you know, outstruck 68-3, taken down 5 times over the course of 3 rounds. But Umar Nurmagomedov very well might be the number 2 or even on any night, the number 1 bantamweight in the world. Brad Katona, even at his best, has never been close to that. And Bexot had a moment against Umar Nurmagomedov. That's already enough for me. And what's crazy here, 138, is you can get Bexot Almacan minus 160 money line right now. Minus 160, wow. Dude. You got like this. This isn't Jesse Strader, and not even the same thing. But you get what I'm saying. It's not the guy that you're hoping to hang around the UFC. This guy can make his way up the rankings, absolutely. And as solid and consistent as Katona could be, that's just not in the cards for him.
Yeah, so it's weird because money keeps coming in on Katona, and I've heard a lot of people. He seems to be the public's dog of the week. And I get it. He's got the experience there. He's been in the UFC for a while. You know, he has that. He has the name recognition. He has a solid skill set, but like he's not really stopping anybody, right? I mean, very rarely is he getting a stoppage win. A lot of times he's winning rounds by shooting a double leg, getting to the hips, and then putting him up against the cage and staying on that double leg and not really getting a whole lot going. Now, he has boxing combinations, things like that, but he's also got a weirdly short wingspan, so he sometimes struggles at distance striking. It was impressive what he was able to do against Cody Gibson, because Cody Gibson's actually pretty good, but we haven't seen that really since. I think Bexot is the side. I think a lot of people are really worried about the whole overrating somebody in a loss, because we've been tricked by that before. Most of us have anyway. I don't know that that's the case here. I think Bexot gets it done. I think at the line, he's very much playable. I thought he was playable at minus 185. Now he's down to minus 160. So I'm on Bexa as well.
Folks, that is all 12 fights for UFC 315. Again, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. UFL content Friday mornings, DFS values picks Friday afternoons. Come out to the RotoBaller MMA Discord on Saturday. I might be going back on Wager Wars tomorrow night. We'll see if the scheduling works out. 138 MMA, thank you so much for being here. Stay in the course, making picks for all 12 fights. If there is anything you want to say, tell people where they can find your content. The floor is yours.
Awesome, brother. Hey, thanks for having me. I enjoyed this. It was a good time. You have a great show. Fantastic. The way that you carry the show, it's top tier, man. So it was an honor to go against you at Wager Wars back in the day. Like, however, I don't know, a few months ago, last year even, whatever it was. But good times. So yeah, you can find me at 138 MMA. 3 numbers, 3 letters, pretty easy to find them. It's that pretty much everywhere. Got some content coming out soon. This Thursday, I'll be live on my YouTube channel with our panel show that we do for every pay-per-view. So got a few special guests on that one as well. So tune into that if you're looking for more MMA content late in the week.
Folks, thank you so much for listening. Have yourselves a great week. Enjoy the slew of combat sports in UFC 315 that we have coming up this weekend. And peace.